Welcome to Brainfluence. I'm Roger Dooley. This is the first episode of the new year, and there's a good chance that by now you have set up one or more New Year's resolutions. Maybe you've even stopped doing one of those. Hopefully not this early, but there is a study that shows that within the first month, 80% of New Year's resolutions fail, and the number that make it through to the end of the year is in the low single digits. The problem with resolutions is that they represent often important goals in your life. I want to lose weight, I want to exercise more, eat more healthfully, and so on. But they tend to be rather non-specific. So what we want to do today is focus on behaviors, those behaviors that will get you to the place where you want to be. So first, you do want to establish those goals, new habits that you want to form, perhaps a big project that you want to complete. Maybe you want to finally write that book that you've been thinking about. So establish those, but then we have to translate those into behaviors so that we can employ what is called behavior design. Now, we can't talk about behavior design without talking about B.J. Fogg from Stanford, who is one of the pioneers in that space. He is famous for his Fogg behavior model that says you need three things to create or change a behavior. You have to have motivation. The person wants to do the behavior or want the result of doing the behavior. You've got to have ability, which translates into not too much effort, not too difficult. And then finally, you have to have a trigger, or what he now calls a prompt, something to get the ball rolling. So when that prompt occurs, if motivation and ability are there in the right combination, it will happen. If they aren't, it won't. Let me give you an example from the business world. If you go to the homepage of AppSumo.com, a software deals company, you will find one giant prompt to subscribe. Their objective with their website is to get you to subscribe to their mailing list so then they can send you deals. So all you see is a big prompt to subscribe, and they provide motivation in a couple of ways. They talk about how you'll never pay full price for software again. They tell you you'll get the hottest deals. They could increase motivation even more if they wanted to by saying, we'll give you a $20 coupon on your first order if you sign up now. But apparently, this has proved to be sufficient motivation for their purposes. And they address ability as well. There is one very visible little box where all you have to do is fill in your email address. Nothing else, just your email. No name, no address, no other stuff, just your email and a button to click, and you are done. That makes it as easy as humanly possible to subscribe. Chances are you only have to type a character or two and your browser will fill in the rest. So let's begin, assuming you've already got your goal, by defining what those behaviors are that will get you toward that goal. So for example, say you decide that this is the year that you write your first book or your next book. That is a great goal, but it's not a behavior. Now, oftentimes you will see recommendations from productivity experts on, okay, you got to break down a big task like that into more specific activities like write an outline. And that's a good thing too, but that's more of a milestone. Once again, it's not really a behavior. Instead, you want to think about really putting down something specific. For instance, every weekday at 8 in the morning, I'm going to open my word processor and I will do nothing until I have written 500 words. I can write more if I want, but I will get at least that number before I do anything else. Now, this is a very specific and actionable behavior. And then 500 words doesn't sound like a lot, but in 120 days, that will give you 60,000 words that would be enough to populate a book, perhaps with some editing, but at least you will be well on your way. Another example, say you want to start running. It sounds kind of like a behavior, running's a behavior, but that is not specific enough. Instead, you want to say something like, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I will walk or jog or run, depending on your level of fitness, and you may vary the time too, as soon as I wake up. Again, this is very specific and actionable. And then once you've got this, that now you want to put behavior design to work. Use those principles that Fogg established, beginning with motivation. And there's lots of ways you can motivate yourself. I'm just going to touch on a few. One, of course, is that sort of big picture motivation. Focus on why you were doing the behavior. For example, if you are running, it's because you want to increase your fitness level. You want to live longer. All these sort of big picture goals. Perhaps you want to improve your appearance. All these things are good. They're not going to necessarily be the things that get you out of bed, but it's important to keep them in mind. The next thing that you want to do is to make a commitment. I know, having written several books, there is absolutely nothing that increases my motivation like a signed contract from a publisher with a specific number of words and a specific deadline. I was motivated to write before, but this certainly increases that motivation to the point where, okay, I am really going to buckle down and do this. But that commitment doesn't have to be a signed legal contract. Rather, you can make all kinds of commitments. You can tell friends and family that you're going to do something. It can be as simple as writing it down on a piece of paper and signing it and leaving that paper on your desk or someplace visible. In fact, there are some people that make a commitment to do something that they don't want to do if they fail in their behavior. For example, to make a donation to a cause they really hate, perhaps to the opposing political party that they do not like, if they fail to meet their behavior goal. And something else that I find useful is using little rewards. Reward anticipation is a good thing. It stimulates dopamine in the brain. So tell yourself that once you complete writing those 500 words, you will then allow yourself to have a snack or go get a latte or something. If you complete that exercise program, then you can stop for breakfast or something. Whatever works for you, associate that behavior with a little reward at the end of it. Now, what I want to focus mostly on today is ability, because ability can be even more significant, I think, than motivation. It's difficult to increase motivation past a certain point. In fact, B.J. Fogg says, don't focus on motivating people to do something. Instead, focus on making that thing easier to do. Our Nobel Prize winner, Richard Thaler, says that if you want to encourage some activity, make it easier. Seems like a pretty simple concept, but this is more or less what won him his Nobel Prize. Now, there's a lot of research that backed that up, and also quite a bit of real-world experience in increasing, say, the number of people that enrolled in their retirement plan. So there was a lot that went into this, but the principle itself is very simple. Make it easier. I put this in slightly different terms. Friction changes behavior. That's pretty much what underlies everything in my book, Friction. And by friction, I mean any unnecessary effort to perform a task. That's my simplest definition of it. So if you reduce friction for a desired behavior, you are more likely to get that behavior. And now sometimes you can add friction to an undesired behavior. Perhaps you are trying to create a habit or avoid some particular behavior, say eating ice cream, then you can add friction to that behavior. In fact, that was one thing that bedeviled my Austin-based friend, Dr. Art Markman at the University of Texas, who in his past wanted to stop eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream, which was his downfall from a weight and health standpoint. So he found that simply by not having it in his freezer, he eliminated that behavior. Now, he knew that he could get in his car and go to the store and pick up a pint of Ben & Jerry's if he wanted to, but that was too much effort in any given moment. And so adding that friction changed that behavior. In fact, sometimes even adding a little bit of friction can change behavior. Experimenters at Yale went into Google's New York City office where people were eating too much candy, too many bad-for-them snacks like M&Ms. And of course, I have to add, psychologists love M&Ms because they are colorful, they're discreet, you can count them and weigh them very easily, they don't get messy. And what they did was, in order to reduce consumption of M&Ms, they took them from the front of the snack table and put them farther toward the back where they were a little bit more difficult to reach, and they put them in an opaque container instead of a clear glass container to reduce the visual prompt. And even that little bit of extra effort, that little extra friction, caused the consumption of M&Ms to drop by a couple of million calories a month in that particular office. So even adding a little bit of friction can make a difference. Something else that you can do is to prepare in advance for the behavior that you want. If you are going to be working out first thing in the morning, don't wait till the morning to go hunt down your workout clothes and any gear you need and to download some new content into your smartphone to listen to. Have all that ready to go the night before. So literally all you have to do is get out of bed, do your first few little things and get going. Another thing that you can do to promote these behaviors is to eliminate distractions, particularly if it is a more cerebral behavior, say your writing assignment, or perhaps you are going to be doing some studying or learning, you're going to do some Duolingo lessons. Be sure that you have all notifications turned off, that there's nothing that is going to potentially ding or provide a visual cue to you that will take you away from the task at hand. And eliminating any extra effort is important. My friend James Clear, in his really good book, Atomic Habits, points out that if you are going to sign up for a gym to work out on your way home from the office, what you should do is be sure that gym is directly on your commute home. He says that if you have to drive even, say, 5 minutes out of your way to get to the gym, maybe they've got a better price, maybe their locker room is a little bit nicer, those things are great, but over time you are less likely to keep doing that behavior because of the extra effort involved. You'll find an excuse, oh gee, I really have very little extra time tonight, I'll just go straight home. So look at every part of your process for the behavior and make sure that there's no unnecessary effort in there. Another important concept is to start small. This is what underlies BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits method. And in that, he says that you should not set an aggressive behavior goal. In other words, if you are going to exercise, you don't say, okay, this year is the year I'm going to do it, and immediately commit to exercising 5 days a week for an hour a day or something like that. Instead, you should start with the smallest increment of behavior that is really, really super easy. One of his examples is flossing. Most of us don't find flossing to be a fun activity. We get motivated a few days before we're going to the dentist, and then a few days after we leave the dentist because the dentist or the hygienist said, hey, you need to do a better job of flossing. But if it's effortful and kind of unpleasant, so after a while we fall out of that habit. So what BJ says is that if you're simply saying, okay, now I'm going to floss every day, you're doing it wrong. He suggests starting with one tooth, just flossing one little tooth. Now, that's not going to change your dental hygiene significantly, but what it will do is lead to the beginning of habit formation because it's very low effort. You can't really justify not flossing one tooth because it's only going to take a few seconds. So you do that for a while, and then you add a second tooth, which is not going to seem much more effortful at that point, and so on. And over time, you will build up to the point where the entire habit doesn't seem overly effortful to you, and in fact, it is a habit. Sure, you'd probably like to skip it, but at that point, it doesn't seem that bad. Now, the final element in BJ's model is the prompt, and this is what gets the ball rolling for you. And this is one place where that distracting technology may be able to help you out. What you should do is in your calendar, for any behavior that is supposed to occur at a particular time, or even if it's not, if you can set a time for it, put that item right into your calendar. That's going to have two effects. First of all, you can have it notify you so you don't forget to begin the activity when you're supposed to. And then also it will block out some time so that either you or anybody else doesn't accidentally or on purpose schedule something in place of that behavior. You can use triggers, visual triggers. For instance, if you're going to run first thing in the morning, put your running shoes right by the side of your bed. So when you're getting out of bed, you practically trip over them. That's going to be an immediate indicator to your rather foggy brain at that point that, okay, hey, this is my running day. So I should finish getting dressed and do that. And forming habit chains is very effective too. In other words, if you have an existing thing that you do every day, then attach your desired behavior to that and relate the two. And James Clear talks about this a lot in Atomic Habits, but BJ Fogg has what I think is the most amusing example of habit chaining. He wanted to establish a habit of doing push-ups every day, perhaps a dozen or so at least. And what he decided to do was start a habit chain. So every time he went to the bathroom in his home, he would then do one push-up. He started with one push-up, just that's all. And over time, doing this one push-up became a habit. And doing one push-up for most of us isn't all that effortful. Doing 12 or 25 or something would be a lot more effort. And even if we could do that, we might find it, gee, I really don't want to do that. But just by starting with a single push-up, with this cue of, okay, I use the bathroom in my house, so I am going to now do a push-up, he formed this habit. And over time, he added a second one and a third one. And he would never add another push-up until the first batch seemed more or less effortless. It didn't take any great effort to do. And ultimately, he worked up to a dozen push-ups each time, which he would then perform multiple times during the day. And I personally tried this. It sounded like such a crazy idea. And I can tell you that it worked. I was not a really good push-up doer before that. But over a period of time, I did work up to doing a dozen push-ups multiple times per day, simply by that chaining that habit. So remember to look at each of those three parts of the behavior model when you're planning your behavior, and be sure to make your commitment. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to make a commitment. What I'll encourage you to do is drop by the YouTube page if you're not there already for this. And right after you click that like button, and even if you're not going to make a commitment, please click that like button anyway. It really helps. Immediately after that, go to the comments section and put down very briefly what your commitment, what your behavior commitment is. This will be a public commitment, and research shows that public commitments are more effective than ones you make to yourself in your head. And I will be sure to read it and respond, perhaps with a word of encouragement. If you don't want to make a public commitment, drop me an email at roger@rogerdooley.com, and I will read your commitment and perhaps again provide a word of encouragement for that. But make some kind of commitment, even if you just, like I said before, write it down on a piece of paper and put that piece of paper on your desk. That will help. Now, I want to leave you with a few resources, some of which I have already mentioned. The first is BJ Fogg and his book, Tiny Habits. Excellent book that goes into his method in great detail with lots of great examples. He's been teaching this for years and years, has taught thousands and thousands of people. And if you go to tinyhabits.com, he will let you enroll in a free 5-day program. Now, I have no direct connection to BJ or any of the other authors that I have mentioned or will mention, but I am sure, and I haven't also I have not done this 5-day plan, but I'm sure if it comes from BJ that it will be based on science and probably quite effective. I also mentioned James Clear and his book, Atomic Habits. This book has sold 2 million copies to date, and that's because it is such great content. It is very readable. I refer to a few of his examples in my own Friction book because I found them so compelling. And if you go to jamesclear.com, you will get a free chapter from that book there. And finally, one that I haven't mentioned yet, but I think can be very valuable when you're trying to accomplish your resolutions, is Nir Eyal and his book, Indistractable. This is his follow-on bestseller to his first bestseller, Hooked. And it is all about how to avoid distraction from derailing you from what you want to achieve and from happiness in life. And if you go to nirandfar.com, that's NIR and far.com, he will give you a free 80-page workbook to help you become indistractable. I really appreciate your tuning in. Please drop by rogerdooley.com, where you can find my social media accounts. I'm pretty active on the major platforms, particularly LinkedIn and Twitter, and also see my various blog posts and other content. Thanks so much, and I wish you success with your resolutions and also to have a great new year.